Any Kubrick movie is a bit of a Rorschach test. Anything you say probably reveals more about you than about the movie. Now, this is tricky stuff when it comes to Eyes Wide Shut because we're talking about some personal stuff. That's right, the big SEX and the even bigger LOVE, and the biggest of all, FIDELITY. That's right, fidelity. Fidelio, the password into and perhaps admonition against the famed orgy scene of Eyes Wide Shut, the opera by Beethoven. A concept that grips you one day and twists all the freewheeling libido of singleness into a prim and civilized shape. But a libido is a primal fact unfit for the gilded cage. It snarls and sneers and sits plotting in the corner of a relationship, waiting to slide a shiv between your ribs or slip to freedom through the tunnel you never knew it was digging. Ah, but oops, there I go talking about myself again. Back to Kubrick. Sometimes the truth of a thing is not so much in the thinking of it as in the feel of it, he once said. This is why I love Eyes Wide Shut. It resounds with me in a way few films do, true as any mystery by David Lynch or a Beethoven symphony or a Werner Herzog documentary. Not necessarily comprehensible or reducible, no. On the contrary, a faithful sketch of an event, described without judgment or moralizing. It describes a phantasmagoria that is born and dies and of which the main characters are constituent parts. We may apply our own morals and interpretations, but they won't stick. For those expecting a dirty movie, Kubrick gives us the money shot as soon as the lights are down. Nicole Kidman's award-winning ass and those long, long legs on high heels, unveiled as she drops her dress for all to see. Now, Bill and Alice Hartford, played by Kidman and Tom Cruise, are a well-to-do couple with a Central Park West apartment. He, a doctor to the privileged rich, she, an out-of-work art curator. A Christmas party one night and some pot smoking the next lead to discussions of sexual politics. Kidman's acting in this scene is one of my favorite by any actress in any film. Her description of a sexual fantasy sets off a psychic bomb in her husband's head, and the midsection of the film is devoted to him tracing the contours of this slow-motion flowering of repressed emotion, which climaxes with the famed orgy scene. Now, my favorite part of Eyes Wide Shut is actually after the orgy. The next day, Bill Hartford retraces his steps, picking up the pieces of the mess he's potentially made, perhaps trying to keep the night's florid fantasy alive even as it begins to dry up and cold reality set in again. This is the most important part of psychological fantasy, which few works of art realize. Reality will assert itself. As in the old fairy tales, the elves turn to sticks at dawn, and we are left only with the dream and little faith that there was truth to it. There's a lot to this movie I don't understand and won't understand and will discover in years to come. Maybe I'll come to dislike it. But I will say this, and fuck it, this is Kubrick's most personal film. Maybe it's lesser for that, less an objective act of cinematic creation than his earlier works. But you can't make a movie about love, sex, and marriage, least of all if you've been married 40 years, without there being a prerequisite admission. I am revealing my experience of this intimate reality. Kubrick never dropped an atom bomb or led Roman slaves in revolt, went to Jupiter or fought in Vietnam, but he was a family man. You don't make your last film about fidelity and, after 40 years of marriage, fail to reveal something personal. His wife's paintings line the film's hallways, for God's sake. In closing, the simple fact is, Kubrick's movies leave me unwilling to criticize, comment, or analyze, except on a technical level. They are works of an obsessive-compulsive mind, a love for cinema, and a demand that she could be more than the can-can dancing floozy that once paraded out of the Nickelodeons, and across VistaVision epics and bloated musicals to the comic book blockbusters of the modern age, a money-grubbing slut without an ounce of self-worth. He is demanded by his presence alone. Can cinema not be more? Doesn't it want to be? Don't you want it to be? So, gentlemen, Eyes Wide Shut. Arguably Kubrick's most reviled film.
Yeah, and that really bothers me because this movie moved me more than any of them, Bill. And
did you like it the first time you saw it?
I saw it in the theater opening night, and I don't think I understood it. I was in my mid-20s. But after living life for like almost 15 more years, it made a hell of a lot more sense. I think it's definitely for the mature mind, or the maturer mind.
I feel like Kubrick's movies in general do that. They sort of withhold some of their secrets until you've had a certain experience.
Absolutely,
is like a magic password that opens up a part. He had a pretty objective and. I would say there's a lot of wisdom in his movies. I know that's a hokey word, but so be it.
No, it's true. I mean, there's no doubt about that. He listen, when I went back to watch this film, I mean, you know, when you get that excitement, you know, that you're just watching something that's just so genuine and so sincere. This is what I got when I rewatched Eyes Wide Shut. Now, yeah, Bill, I saw it in the theater, and then I've watched it probably 3 or 4 more times over the years. But this time, it just really blew me away. I want to let everyone know that Max and Jeff have left the arena, but we are now joined by Joe Christiana, and Dave is still with us. Joe, how you doing?
Hey, good, Tom. Glad to be here.
I'm happy that you're here, and let's hear some thoughts on Billy's review.
Yeah, you know what? Unfortunately, Tom, your comments dropped out, and you were talking about seeing this movie in the theater, and I also saw it in the theater. Can you just? I'm sorry. Can you just go over what your reaction was in the theater? Because I didn't hear what you had said.
Sure. My reaction initially when I saw it in the theater, I mean, I was in awe of it, but I really had I couldn't understand it at the time. I mean, I was in my mid-20s. I was a young man. But after watching it through the years, particularly this last time, it really moved me. And I think that this film is for the mature or the maturer. You know, it's for the mature mind. And the more life that you live, the more you can understand a film like Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah. It was just, I saw this in the theater as well, and just I was curious what your reaction was, and I just remember being really excited to go and see first run Kubrick film
Right.
in the
Yeah.
theater.
I thought there was going to be like a mob scene at the theater that I went to because it was going to be the last film that you could see of his in a theater. There were like 6 or 7 people in the theater. And I have a real, I know this is,
And all of them were in trench coats.
but no, there was this one dude that was sitting about 7 or 8 rows in front of the people that I was with, and he was with his girlfriend. It was a black couple, and Billy, Joe, Dave. Somewhere midway through the movie, this dude just goes out loud in like a vast, almost empty theater. He's just like, "Man, this movie is stupid." That has never left my mind.
Yeah, that happened to me once as well at a Roman Polanski film, and I love that comment because it always happens during the films that are the most like challenging or stimulating. You know, like
Hold on a second, Joe. Is that Polanski film The Ninth Gate?
it was the Night Gate. Yeah, it was. He just
And was it at the end of the movie someone yelled that sucked?
no. He said that exact thing that Tom just said. That was fucking stupid.
I think this may actually be my experience that you've grafted into your brain as your memory, because at the end of The Ninth Gate, the credits start to roll and someone just yelled out, "That sucked!"
Oh no! Well, I think we've had this discussion before. Maybe we're crossing. Maybe we're
in parallel universes.
No, but that actually, I mean, it definitely happened. But yeah, man, you were saying that as a mature film, Tom. I do understand it much better after being older,
Right.
and understanding, especially what it's like to be in a relationship,
Sure.
and especially needing. What I recognized in the film this time around was how much this sense of jealousy charges a relationship, and how necessary it is for it to lend a sense of vitality to the people involved in the relationship who say that they care for one another. And it's such a paradoxical sensation that you love somebody and you trust them completely, but you want them to be jealous of you on some level,
And you want to be jealous of them.
and you want to be jealous of them, and that
Because if you don't have an object of envy, then you tire of that person.
right.
But
There's
this-
got to be danger in it. Danger, and it's all tied into sex. And Billy, you mentioned it in your review there that this is really personal, and it's just. That really surprised me. It took me off guard, your comment
too.
there, because I was like, I never think of Kubrick films as personal. You know what I mean? And and I had never really heard this one be called.
One of the great shots in the movie is right at the beginning when they're in, and we'll just continue with spoilers galore.
Sure.
whatever. There's the party scene at the beginning of the movie. They're in the bathroom and the girl has OD'd, and Sidney Pollack is standing looking down, and the entire shot is framed in the background by one of Kubrick's wife's paintings, and it's a woman reclining looking down on the scene. And every time I see that shot, I just think of what Kubrick was seeing in his head. Like, this is a work of art by his wife, who this character, who probably is a stand-in for her in some regard, is like a mythological personage staring down on the whole scene, you know? Like, her eyes are in every scene, looking at things that are going on, even if the men don't realize she's there, you know? Like, I don't know. I feel like Kubrick's wife's personality sort of permeates the background of the whole movie, you know? I mean, I could be projecting or something, but, you know?
Well, it's hard to know that for sure because the guy's been so guarded, which I'm sure you guys have talked about in the previous discussion, you know? It's like almost nothing is known about, you know, the man's actual personality, you know what I mean? And it's like always feel like his films are like this weird sort of ruse or artifice that he's trying to show you his personality, but at the same time he's so meticulously painting something over his, you know what I mean?
Well, you know, there's been, you know, I mean, there's been so much said of the man, and most of it is from what I understood, it had always been untrue. His wife said that, you know, Kubrick had this reputation that he hated women or despised women, and she was like, the guy was surrounded by, you know, me and his daughters. You know, he loved women.
Oh, right,
you
right,
know?
yeah.
And, you know, so
well, everybody's projecting things onto the dude because all you have, you know, you judge the what's the saying you always say, that you judge the tree by the fruit, right? You know, so you're looking at a dude who made, you know, movies for 4 decades or whatever, and didn't really write a really strong role for a woman until this film, and it actually probably blew away, you know, a whole decade worth of female performances, you know, that preceded it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point.
That scene with Nicole Kidman is when after they smoke the joint and she goes off. That is like one of the most beautiful pieces of music. I never tire of watching that scene. Her performance is unbelievable there. I mean, it's one of the great acting jobs.
She's
of
good,
the last
Billy.
20
I mean, hey, listen.
It's one of those, we talked about it, you know, we've talked about it earlier in the show. He managed to get people who you never would have thought that they even had, as you know, great an actor as they were, or whatever. Right. He got better performances out of his actors than any other movie was ever able to get out of them. Right. You know?
Yeah, I mean, like we were talking about at the beginning of his career with Timothy Carey. Obviously the Malcolm McDowell performance in The Clockwork Orange is just near perfect.
Yeah.
You know, that there's been so many great examples of that. Bill, you know, you didn't I mean, really touch upon a lot how the dreamlike quality of this movie, though.
Well, I mean, I describe it as a phantasmagoria just because, yeah, I mean,
because it's
yeah,
it's like
it's
in a world in a world that almost doesn't exist, or it's like part of a world that does exist. And you know, for instance, like in Greenwich, I mean, the street signs that hang, they don't exist. You know, I mean, like none of those streets exist in New York.
I actually cut an entire paragraph about that out of my review for the sake of brevity. But yeah, I agree. I mean, Scorsese said he loved Eyes Wide Shut, and he said when people complain that it doesn't look like New York, he said, well, it's like someone in a foreign country dreaming about being in New York. Wow. And I love that. And the craziest thing is, and there's a lot of online commentary about this already, you know, this is kind of Stanley Kubrick doing a David Lynch movie in a bit of a way, you know, and he's
or
Soderbergh
too. I mean, the movie just has that Steven Soderbergh quality to it.
Yeah, well, it's in the thing, like the thing
Kubrick
that
has a Steven Soderbergh quality to his movie.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, like the Monkees being a big influence on the Beatles. But the thing is, like Joe was saying, you know, Kubrick is so meticulous that you just it's so realistic, everything you're seeing, the lighting and everything, that it's hard to even peg, you know, that what you're looking at may be completely phony or artificial or a dream, or, you know, like he makes everything seem so real that I guess this is what I love about one of the things I love about Eyes Wide Shut is when you're in a David Lynch movie, you know everything's subjective, and in Eyes Wide Shut, you can't really tell what's subjective and what's not. You know, like it's more mysterious for being more realistic. You know,
which is intentional, I think, especially in this film, because I mean it's based on the what's his name, Schnitzler novel.
Arthur Schnitzler.
Yeah, and that was actually
you guys with these Schnitzlers and Schwenkmeyers and
translated as
anything with an SCH at the beginning.
It's it's about dream novels. I think the title was Traum Novelle or whatever, which I think
dream novel.
Yeah, which is dream
story is the how they translate.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that air of and I actually read this memoir by Frederick Raphael, who was a screenwriter, and one of the things that they discussed early on was that quality, and his perception was that the whole novel was actually a dream, and they discussed that early on in the conception of the script.
There's a couple of inconsistencies in the movie. I mean, like internet forums have gone to town, as with all Kubrick movies, nitpicking every detail, but there's definitely inconsistencies that make the whole thing feel like a dream, like logic that doesn't flow properly.
Well, the one thing that I was surprised, maybe you touched on it in your intro there, Billy, but I was surprised you didn't kind of hone in on it.
Everyone's surprised about what you left out of your.
Yeah, well, there's so much to talk about.
You didn't do a good enough job.
My original draft was 3 pages long, so.
Jesus Christ, Billy! Like, get it right, man.
Sorry, guys. I'm such. Well, Dave pegged it right at the beginning. He said, "Joe, you probably haven't heard it yet, but Dave's review was basically my review is a failure because I'm dealing with Kubrick movies." And then all of us were immediately like, "I'm really glad you said that, Dave, because all of our reviews are failures."
Yeah, big time. Go on, Joe.
Oh, I was just going to say the production design of this film was just really it led to that quality of dreamlike, and there's this weird consistency in the lighting and the and how there's Christmas lights, the same type of Christmas lights in all the apartments the dude stumbles into, and there's that waterfall light motif. Every house has a Christmas tree in it. I know it's Christmas time, but there's this weird sort of coherency to the New York the New York interiors that Kubrick's presenting here, that this does not happen when you're actually stumbling in and out of places in New York, and I think he achieves that so well, beautifully, or a cinematographer did or whatever. Like there's like the palette that he uses, like if you notice there's strong blues, really heavy strong blue in the background.
All the interiors are like gold colored, and all the exterior windows have this blue, just amazingly beautiful saturated blue coming in.
Yeah, so I mean, where there is like this he goes for having this weird sense of hyper reality of New York, but at the same time it's very dreamlike, because it's like you're almost tuned to the same. Everything's just sort of like fluid, you know what I mean? And I guess even the camera work is very like easy and fluid, like even like say if Spielberg was handling that opening scene where a married couple is getting ready to go to a party, and there's they're getting dressed and doing this and that, the child is getting babysitter or whatever, and they're going in, it would be frantic, there'd be overlapping dialogue, this and that and the other thing. But what you have here is this very paced floating camera through this steady cam.
Well, and it's like you cut in the middle of something that's already taking place, and Eyes Wide Shut from start to finish has this flow of time that is unbelievable. You just feel the constant sort of methodical flow of it, and you cut in on that scene, right? You're in the middle of these people, there's no explanation, and you're just following them. It doesn't have a movie introduction.
Right.
Even you know what I mean, 'cause I'm thinking about that opening scene with them getting ready for the party, and what I really love is just like her,
Nicole Kidman's ass.
No, just her like when she's just peeing on the toilet.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
mundane little detail.
Exactly. Yeah. And most filmmakers wouldn't even think about even doing something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a sense of familiarity in there.
You know, and the door's open and they're husband and wife and it's okay, you know, like, you know, it gives you a sense of like there's just obvious openness up until then between this couple, or at least they, you know, they think that they're being open with each other. I mean, just by a simple shot like that, by her being in the bathroom, door open, taking a piss, doing something that we all usually shut and lock the door over. He's thinking about every fucking thing.
Yeah. Well, every moment and every second in a Kubrick film is charged because you're so like because of the dude's body of work and the masterpieces. When you're looking at a new film, which this was the only opportunity any of us really had to see a new film in the theater by this guy to see what he's up to.
Yeah.
You know, at the time because of our ages or whatever, you just so looking in and reading into everything because there's just such a weight to everything because of what precedes him, but also because of the meticulousness of his direction. You know what I mean? It's just every moment is just loaded and charged with meaning. You know what I mean? Even if it's not even fully there or intentional. You know.
I want to get Dave in about Eyes Wide Shut because he's been over there in Canada quite silent. Dave, your thoughts on Eyes Wide Shut?
Well, I too saw it in a theater, and I saw it in a perhaps slightly less obnoxious theater, but I still remember people yelling shit at the screen.
Oh.
I don't remember what they yelled exactly, but there were some disappointed filmgoers. I still don't understand that. Like, don't you know what you're getting into? But it seems that people just randomly pick movies to go to, and then get all outraged when it's not like Iron Man 3 or something. So, yeah, it was really. But when I saw it, I have to echo your sentiments a bit, Tom, in that I saw it completely differently than the way I see it now.
Right.
You know, my perception of the film was utterly different. I just remember thinking, wow, that would be crazy to find a fucking mansion like that, dude. You know, and it was just like,
yeah,
it was just very
because you're a charged up young man. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, and I was like, man.
Plus, it's just so much to take in. You know, I mean.
Well, you're okay. So here, like literally, it was just like, first of all, I mean, it's beautiful looking. It's incredible looking. It's got this like really intense story going on between these two characters. But I'm telling you, when I first saw it, it was just like, wow, what a crazy night that dude had, and just like that's just something there's got to be a place like that somewhere. There's rich people doing this shit, you know, and that really fascinated me. Also, Leelee Sobieski really
fascinated.
I enjoyed her performance tremendously.
Yeah. She's in like one of those like many like little scenes that Kubrick throws into this film during Harford's stroll throughout the evening. He wanders into so many different like weird circumstances, I guess, and weird people.
But I love that.
I love it too.
Like I'm a guy who used to just walking around and just like observing shit and watching people do stuff and observing weird street drama.
There's a great line in the scene with Sidney Pollack where at the end when it's like this massive exposition scene, which is crazy. I hated it when I first saw it, and now I love it. And Pollock says to Tom Cruise, "You want to play some billiards?" And Tom Cruise says, "No, thanks. I'll just watch."
Yeah.
And I was like, "That's the key to the whole character of this movie."
Yeah, that's great.
And Pollock is.
I was like, there is a married man in the main character in this movie. Everything that is about fidelity and this character in this movie is no thanks. I'll just watch.
Pollock is extremely intense, man, in this movie. Extremely.
He's great.
Yeah.
You know, something that I noticed. This is one of those that I watch a lot actually. And one time I noticed all the guys thump each other on the chest or hit each other on the arm in this movie. And there's like it's funny. There's so many little details later into this movie. All the guys like have this sort of domineering thing that they're doing. They're always punching each other in the arm and like sort of primate thing. And watching Sidney Pollack's body language in this movie is hilarious. Wow. The way he's just subtly dominating Tom Cruise in every scene is great.
You know, it's so funny because when this was initially supposed to be like a 6-month shoot or whatever, Keitel was playing the Pollock character.
Yeah.
And they actually filmed.
And Jennifer Jason Leigh got
was
cut from the movie,
she was
too.
the hooker. But they filmed a lot of stuff with Keitel. Boy, I'd love to watch some of that and compare it to what Pollock did. Oh, Dave, go on, brother.
Well, no, I was just saying it was. I don't know. Like, that's the kind of guy I was at that point. Just kind of the guy who would take a walk at 2 a.m. and see what the hell was going on, and not necessarily participate in anything. Just observe and just see what's happening. And I took just tremendous pleasure in that. And so that was like my entry point to the film. It was just like, wow, this guy, that would be a hell of a night doing that. You know what I mean? That's like the shit that you hope is going to happen. You know what I mean? Or you're just like, I want to see something crazy tonight.
I don't think I could handle it.
I would like to know if I could.
Joe, you could handle it, right?
No, I do. I remember thinking that sort of, Dave. No, I couldn't handle it, Tom. But I do. But I remember thinking about how beautiful these people are, how much money they have, how well dressed he is. Like, I was like, if I walked into that mansion, there's no way that I would.
They would know.
Yes, no.
You would be the taxi driver.
Yeah, I would be the exact. Thanks, Billy. But you're right.
Hey, dude, I wouldn't even make taxi driver. All right, I'd be like the third guy in the band in the piano cafe.
Yeah, he would be the masquerade store owner.
Yeah, exactly. I would exactly pimping my daughter.
My hair, it falls down too soon.
Listen, can I say another thing? Every scene in this movie is friggin' hilarious. Every character actor, Alan Cumming as the desk clerk at the end of the movie, is one of the funniest routines I've ever seen in a Kubrick movie.
It's uncomfortable.
Right?
He's so uncomfortable.
Yeah. He's so cute. It's like every character in this movie is attracted to Tom Cruise, right? Have you noticed that? Every single character in this movie hits on Tom Cruise at some point.
Well, except those,
and then you see
those
Alan
college He-Men that walk by him.
And that is like a repressed.
Of course,
like,
it is. Yeah.
Like whatever.
It's so great. Yeah.
It's so great. But yeah, that I never remember that actor's name. But the guy who plays the masquerade store owner is just absolutely brilliant. Like all the support. It's one of those things where you watch Kubrick movies over and over again, and you realize all these little performances are. He gave these actors some of the best performances of their career.
That's another similarity with Lynch too, though. Right?
Yeah.
In that Lynch gives these character actors those same kind of crazy opportunities, right?
I just can't, I mean, I just think to myself, like Kubrick directing that scene at the store with those, like just giving those two Japanese guys direction. Like when the camera's not rolling.
Hold the wig over your crotch.
Oh my God. Man, I want to tie Full Metal Jacket in with this, obviously, because these are the last two films that are on the plate tonight. Joe, Full Metal Jacket. Am I wrong by saying that this is one of your favorite Kubrick movies?
Yeah, geez, you just jumped the track, dude. My train just crashed. I gotta play it. Yeah,
The caboose just shot over the top of the steel.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, and it was 13. What was it? 13 years before that time?
Yeah. It was about 12, 87, I think, and then 99 was Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, absolutely one of my favorite films, man. It's always a joy to go, and I don't know if joy is exactly the right word, but just a great fucking film. I just love that. You know what? I'm gonna tie this back into Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah,
I'm gonna dub. I'll try to make the segue a bit graceful because I think it has a lot to do with Full Metal Jacket. But one of the comments, Billy, that you made was. Or you ended your review of Eyes Wide Shut on was can't cinema be more? He's asking, can't cinema be more? And don't you want it to be more? And I think that's what I've always been drawn to about Kubrick, because he's challenging you. He's making films that like Cronenberg are driven by an idea, and he challenges you to find the idea and put together the symbiogy that he's putting together, but always challenging you. And so like where in Eyes Wide Shut that idea is probably hitting closer to home and desire and all that stuff, the dehumanization is sort of the idea that I always come out with Full Metal Jacket, you know, and how challenging it was that he cleaved that film in half, you know, and it's not a story that has like a typical structure at all. But what you end up with is a moral that's just much richer and more rewarding than sort of your typical 3-act story. You know what I mean? And it's because that cleaving of the film in half is something that just irks people to no end. But it really is it really is where the meaning of the film.
It's kind of the only major redeeming. I mean, I think Full Metal Jacket has a lot of flaws in it, but it is the singular redeeming factor of that movie. Is if you can manage to understand it as a sort of a rhyming scheme, you overlay the two halves over each other, and the juxtaposition. That's kind of the key to that whole movie.
Yeah,
you know?
It's brilliant. I just love it because
the bathroom scene at the end of the first half overlays pretty cleanly with the ending scene of the second half.
Yeah,
you know?
right. So
even that sound effect of the dripping water, if you listen to the soundtrack, it repeats the same sounds in both those scenes.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And how they engage with one another is it's in that engagement where the meaning of the film, you know, you find the meaning of the film in there, you know. But that said, you know, when you're saying he's asking you, can't cinema be more, and don't you want it to be more? Yeah, he's challenging an audience, you know, but at the same time, what I've taken away just looking at his films this week was that he's got a very astute and he's very aware of giving the audience what they want on some level, and I've never really considered that in Kubrick because I've always been so busy.
He was really shrewd, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, I've always been so busy just like reveling in how he's defying an audience to find what he's getting at, you know what I mean? But I've always missed how he's reaching out to an audience and and he's always considerate of what is going to work and what's going to excite them, you know. And that was something new and revelatory for me this week, you know.
Most of his movies made money.
Yeah.
Yep. So as challenging as he was, and as much as he's pushing convention, and as meticulous as he, you know, is with you know, his forms and fucking with the form and all that stuff, and putting out you know, subject matter that's going to be not very popular. He's at the same time, he's always thinking about how the audience is going to respond to what he's, you know, he's like he's a freaking genius, man. He's a mastermind, dude.
We talked about it with the Spartacus thing, and it's really funny. I draw a parallel. He made Spartacus, and we all pretty much agreed that talking about Spartacus or watching the making of would be more interesting than the movie itself, because it's just sort of unwatchable, you know. But he was a genius because he said, I know I can make this movie and it's going to make a bunch of money and I'll never have to beg for a job again, you know. And he pulled it off. And then David Lynch tried to pull off the same thing with Dune, I think, back in the 80s.
Wow.
It did not fare so well, you know.
Right.
But you know, Kubrick knew that he knew how to hit the right buttons, and he was really good at marketing too. You know, he took some control of the marketing schemes behind his movies after Spartacus, and it worked. You know, he oversaw the art direction on, you know, the Clockwork Orange art, which is probably some of the most iconic marketing art for a movie ever, you know, the poster and everything. Right, so yeah, he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, well, just going back to Eyes Wide Shut, what I was really struck by and what is worth mentioning is that trailer, because I don't think, like, the trailer that I saw, I'm pretty sure
there are a few of them.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Do you know what I'm talking about, Tom? There's like no dialogue in the trailer whatsoever. It's just
a Chris Isaak song.
All of the trailer, every trailer that I've ever seen, and most of them are like TV spots. Like, they're really quick.
Yeah,
like they're only like 30 seconds.
And it
long.
Just flashes Kubrick, Cruise, Kidman.
There's that one with the Chris Isaak one is great, with when they show the shot of Cruise walking down the street and he kind of like hits his hands together in anger. It's just really intense. And then there's another one with the creepy piano, I believe.
Yeah.
That, which is
I fucking love that piano.
Yeah, it's on my iPod. That
fucking love that shit.
I guess we're getting sucked back into the Eyes Wide Shut thing, but the music there, to go back to the dream quality, he has that it's a piece by Shostakovich, I think. It's a jazz suite, something like that. But he does this waltzy
With the opening credits
mingling
music,
jazz, dun dun dun
I
da da da
love,
dun da da da
that's on
dun,
my iPod
and
too, Billy. Love it.
it's
Love it.
amazing.
Love it.
And I mean, his soundtracks are bar none the best selections. I mean, his
But
soundtracks
the
are the
creepy
best.
is the creepy piano. Is that his daughter's work?
No, that's a Eastern European composer. I
It
can't
is,
recall
okay.
his name
For
right
some
now,
reason-
but it's a protest. It's funny. It's a protest against communism, and he said the piano piece that dun
Yeah.
dun. He said the composer said that's the knife being driven into Stalin's heart.
Well, I've driven a knife into a lot of parties' hearts when I've had my iPod
Fuck
playing.
yeah, Conrad.
yeah,
and
put
then,
that shit
like,
on in the middle
Well,
of a kegger.
it comes on when I play the iPod on shuffle, and then it's like, everybody's hanging out, having a good time, and then all of a sudden that fucking comes on. It'll definitely change the mood without a doubt.
No, what you do is that's when you break out the masks, Tom.
That's when you break out the supermodel hookers and the masks.
Yeah,
man.
I would.
Can I say about that too? I have a feeling that when I'm 70 years old and I watch Eyes Wide Shut, I don't know why, I have a feeling that orgy scene is going to be hilarious.
yeah.
I get the feeling that as the older you get, like, I mean, obviously Kubrick made that when he was about 70 years old, and I get the feeling that when you look back on a lot of his movies, you're going to see the humor and shit you had. Like, the older I get, the funnier a bunch of stuff in his movies gets anyway. But I think it's going to be hilarious.
The Blu-ray version that I watched too, Bill. With the orgy scene, I think that it was different than what I saw in the theater.
Yeah, well, there's that whole. Yeah, I didn't really touch on that because it's beneath contempt.
Right.
But the American release, they put digital fig leaves in front of all the most raunchy parts of the orgy scene. Everyone knows about this. And it's just contemptible. I mean, you're going to.
That's why the terrorists hate you,
exactly
Billy.
What's that?
That's why the terrorists hate you.
That's why the terrorists hate us, is for our freedoms. It's nuts. You go to a fucking movie that is advertised as Kubrick's porn film starring Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, and then in the money shot you put up pixelated bars in front of the naughty bits. It's insane.
Yeah.
Like, who the hell is going to Eyes? What are you taking your whole family?
You might as well just put like a
there.
You might as well just put a digital shot of me blocking the way.
I would prefer that, actually, Tom. You have a cigarette in one hand, a bottle of beer in the other. Hey,
what's that guy doing there? Yeah, but the poor bastard dies, and these fuckers mess with this movie, man.
They say that he approved that. I don't buy it.
Come on. They say that the guy was dead.
Yeah. Well,
Kubrick
he's
loved it.
full of mystery.
Yeah, he shot all that just so he could put digital fig leaves.
Actually, in a way, I almost think he probably. I mean, if there was any discussion about it, the story goes that he promised to deliver an R-rated movie, right? So if that was the solution and he did have discussion about it and approve it and all that stuff, I kind of get the feeling he was smirking the whole time, knowing that version wasn't going to last. It's not going to be the one that lasts, in posterity. So,
hey, I have a question about that orgy scene to pose to you guys. And no,
Yes. Of course you do.
I have the feeling that whole scene was supposed to be incredibly shocking and all that kind of stuff, but did you? I don't know. I was trying to wrap my head around how someone else might see it, because I just might be so desensitized by, I don't know, just
Joe's watched a lot of porn.
but I guess that's what I'm getting down to. Like,
it's true, Joe. No, because we're sitting here talking about.
I think all of us have watched so much porn that's
just
not a particularly.
But that's what I thought.
Shocking
I felt
scene.
like that was almost a problematic, like almost a flaw of the film, and I. What I mean?
But then in 1999, people were watching porn, but now porn is in every household, every day, being played at some point on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Every single household, at some point during a 24-hour period, porn is on. It's
I know.
on.
Well, so that's what I'm saying.
Minutes,
Do you think that
11 minutes per day, the average American spends looking at porn.
Say it again, Billy.
11 minutes per day, the average American spends looking at porn.
Tom, are you above average or
For the French, it's like 20.
I'm above average, but above. I like that.
Well, the question.
Right, what about you,
is,
Joe? Are you above or below average?
I think I'm pretty close. I'm on par. I'm par for the course. The
you
question.
Don't have that much time. I mean, I live alone. I could really spread my wings over it.
You're gonna get busy one day, Tom. It's gonna even out. The median is gonna be about 11 minutes.
It was at 11 minutes. Like Joe, honestly, like say when I was living with Melissa, it was at 11 minutes. Sometimes even less. I mean, because it was tough with the kid. But now it's like Jesus. I mean, I could, living room.
You got a lot of free time on your
I don't even have. I'm here by myself.
Do you sometimes like just have it playing and then you'll like get up and go and get yourself a drink?
Like take a shit.
Like just let it play, like just have it play and then just be like,
I go get the mail.
Like it's just going whenever you're ready.
No.
Well,
I going back to that, I actually wonder about that because I mean, Kubrick was so meticulous. I can't believe he didn't watch porn in preparation for shooting that scene and be like, well, what are people's expectations? What are average people actually watching these days? So it's hard for me to imagine that he intended he didn't leave anything to chance, So I that's why I kind of wonder if we're going to look at this 20 years from now and just laugh our asses off because it's like a parody of, I mean, for instance, a lot of people have pointed out that it's phony. It's obviously silly, right? There's this ritual with cloaks and moody music, and it's like a parody of what you expect a wealthy orgy to be, right? And it looks like a Helmut Newton photo
like a comic
shoot,
book.
Yeah. So I wonder if. Yeah, well,
what did he say?
What Ken Russell wishes his movies would look like. But I kind of get the feeling that you're going to look back on that 20 years and you're going to see how hilarious it actually is in retrospect, because it really does.
Well, I guess
it's such a satire of your concept.
But now Burger King, commercials are borderline pornographic. Like I refer to like the younger generation like coming up, like I refer to them as generation porn. And what is amazing to me is that Kubrick, like he had his finger on this because he knew that we were becoming we were about to become
yeah, buddy.
And I'm like taking that seriously.
Is that a dirty joke by Joe Mummy?
But no, he was entirely aware of that we were becoming an over sexualized society.
Well, Bill Hicks had his old routine, the comedian, that was the perfect commercial that Coca-Cola wishes it could do, and this was back in the early 90s. It's a naked shot of breasts. You pan down. There's a woman with her legs spread. It pans out. She's completely naked. Flashes to the title card. Drink Coke.
Right.
Well, and it was like, that was the early 90s, and basically that's where we're at.
I mean, it is crazy. It is. And Joe, you're absolutely right that
I understand Billy's point about there being that patent Kubrick dark humor embedded in it, where it's almost like a parody in a like at the same point where it's very stunning.
He's right though. It's silly. Listen to the music as he strolls.
It's true.
As he saunters through an orgy, listen to that ridiculous jungle music kind of that's playing.
So at the same time where it's like haunting and sort of provocative, and a very provocative, obviously, there's still like that sort of black humor embedded in it. I don't know. I just like it just always was a bit distracting to me, just that I felt like it wasn't playing the way that it was intended, and I just wasn't sure if that was my desensitization or not. You know what I mean?
There's a term that I use, pageantry. Bad movies are sort of pageantry to me, where the camera just moves past a series of objects or a series of objects and people move past the camera. Like you're just observing the events without any real emotional catalysts involved. There's no hooks, there's no ups and downs, and that whole scene is very much just pure pageantry. And so I kind of know what you're talking about, because there's nothing to involve you in a deeper way, to disturb you.
Like he always has something or a few things in the films that are just really gonna grab hold of you and shake you. You know what I mean? And I think that's what that was intended to do. And as beautiful as it was, and as haunting as it wasn't as shocking as Gomer Pyle blowing his brains out in the bathroom. You know what I'm saying?
But I feel the same way about The Shining, where at the end of the movie, what's her face is Shelley Duvall is running around with a knife, and she's seen like skeletons and cobwebs and stuff like that, and great party, isn't it? And all that stuff, and it's like, well, that's just pageantry again. You're just it's like a fun house. It's like the beginning of that Rob Zombie movie you reviewed. It's a ride.
Yeah.
You're just passing by animatronic things in action.
Yeah, but that said, though,
he did that a lot, though.
But there was the one thing that was shocking in The Shining was the father flipping out and coming after his kids with the axe. So there was that point where it's something that's gonna rattle you, like something new, something that you haven't seen before, that's rattling you to the core. And that definitely rattled, like that definitely scared the shit out of me when I saw it. And I just don't think I was as rattled when I saw that orgy scene. You know what I mean? And again, I just wasn't sure like how to gauge it, if it was me or like my fault, or a flaw in the film. And
I always find it so deliberately phony. Like at the end when he has to take his mask off, and then you hear the woman's voice,
Sure.
"Take me," and it zooms in, and it's so cheeseball, and you're like, what the hell is he doing here? Like it's so deliberately cheeseball that I'm like, and the whole password thing, and like all that stuff. There's just such a phoniness to certain of those things. I'll tell you this: the scene where after that, where Cruise goes and talks to Sidney Pollack around the billiards table, and there's that whole thing. I found that interminable the first couple times I saw the movie, right? And now it's one of my favorite scenes, and I can't even tell you why exactly, but it's really funny to me for some reason, and I can't put my finger on it. But that's why I maybe, who knows, maybe that orgy scene will be hilarious one day.
Well, let me tell you one thing that I think could be shocking about this movie, and that I think probably surprised a lot of people. And really, I mean, it's the thrust of the film in a way, but that your wife might have desires, and your wife might have this private life that you don't fully understand, and that's shocking to some people. Right. And some people have a real hard time with that notion. And ultimately, that's what this movie's about.
You're right.
Dave, I just thought about this in watching it again today, in preparation for the show. One of the best things that I noted early on, and I kind of re-noticed this time, is after that whole scene, it's almost just sort of laying groundwork for this one shot later in the movie. He gets home and she tells him she's had this dream, and she's basically describing the orgy scene, but she's one of the girls behind the masks, right?
Right.
And then it kind of freaks him out a little bit, but then a couple of scenes later, he comes home. He grabs a beer from the fridge. He looks across the apartment. She's doing homework with the daughter. He's staring at her, takes a sip of beer. She looks up, and she gives him the worst devilish shit-eating grin any woman has ever given a man in a movie ever, right? And all of a sudden, I was like, oh, my God. The thought of, like, you've just seen all that from the orgy scene. You've seen that from the perspective of a male observer, right?
Exactly.
And then the thought, it's all lascivious and it's all lurid and juicy. And then you come back and you think, holy cow, that one of those women was my wife. And she was doing all the shit that I thought was hot from my perspective. Now I'm irate.
Great.
Exactly. And
wow.
That's what you start to see in that movie the more you watch it, and the more when you start to look past, frankly, the Leelee Sobieski and all that shit,
or
the
two Japanese men.
Or the two Japanese men who were fantastic.
Whatever your preference is.
Fantastic. But I mean, like, that's what really struck me about the film, is how often we don't consider our significant others another.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And at the heart of it, is that you need it. It needs to be done.
It needs to be broken.
Yeah.
That's why I love this movie, is because it's a natural occurrence. Like, if you have part of fidelity is understanding the contrast of fidelity. You have to understand why, like, you get into an enclosed space and emotions build up, and then something like this happens that completely breaches all the walls that you've built, that have accumulated in a relationship.
Right.
And it all flows loose for a certain period of time, and it's terrifying and it's dangerous. And then slowly the floodwaters will subside again, but it leaves you with a renewed sense of your own relationship.
Yeah, it charges the relationship for sure.
It recharges it.
Well,
and that's no movie I've ever seen has captured the feeling of that and the arc of that as Eyes Wide Shut has.
Yeah.
Why? Yeah, I'm like, my mind is like moving in 90,000 different directions.
It's weird. We tried to get into Full Metal Jacket,
No,
but like,
fuck
we like
Full Metal Jacket.
And Eyes Wide Shut kicks its ass.
Everybody's been taught you talk about Full Metal Jacket. It's just like,
yeah.
Dead horse.
I know.
Jesus Christ. You know,
Well,
yeah, go on.
I was just gonna say, just to I guess continue what that train of thought that we were just on, is that the last line of the film is, one thing that I know for sure is that we just have to go and fuck.
Right.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because all of a sudden, all this energy is there, and that's what they wanted to begin with. But you know, it needs to.
Well, and that's like the mating game, is basically if just spreading the genome is your main goal, that's fine and dandy. But if you're gonna have a civilized concept of fidelity, you know, marriage and so forth, all of a sudden you open up a can of worms of conditioning and psychological nuance. Like, it just becomes this whole other world, and it becomes kind of like a mating dance, you know. And you have to continually renew that in some weird way, you know. I will say on that note too, it's pretty hilarious that the last line in any Kubrick movie ever is just the single word "fuck" followed by a period.
All right, that's great.
It's just amazing to me, like, thinking about Hartford. Like, I'm just like, I can't stop thinking about this character now. I'm like obsessed with this movie, Billy.
It's pretty
Because
awesome.
he's
man.
like, you know, at the beginning, like, he honestly, like, he's built up this whole false, like, sense of confidence. Like, he has this false confidence about him and his wife and what his relationship is, and like that's what he's been totally like living his whole life based around this confidence of what he thinks his relationship is. And then one moment in one evening during one conversation, it all just crashes down on him.
And here's the thing, a lot of criticism for the movie is that everyone looks at it from the outside and they criticize those characters as sort of bourgeois, spoiled, banal, you know, whatever. And of course, they're terrible. They're not like me. I'm consistently aware of myself as an emotional person. I'm better than them. I don't, I never expect. Yeah, bullshit. No matter who you are or where you are from, your girlfriend can surprise the shit out of you one day. You can surprise the shit out of yourself one day. No one is safe. And a lot of people, no one is safe.
I love it.
It's insane for you to hold those characters at arm's length and think that that's a product of their world and not yours, because it will happen to you, you know. And I love that, you know.
Eyes wide shut.
It would be boring otherwise.
Eyes wide shut.
You know, that does remind me of we touched on this conversation during the Salo discussion, Dave.
Yes,
remember?
Yes, we did.
Remember that, because you were talking about your ex-girlfriend or something, and then you guys were almost like these married couple, like some weird version of it or whatever, and you guys started like flirting with things that I guess got a little bit out of hand or something like that, and yeah, man, I mean. Listen, it's something that pops up all the time. Like, it'd be hot to see, your girl with another girl or whatever you're into, and then if you live that out, it can actually be destructive, So there's this thing where it's fantasy, like it's safe to be.
How close can you get your hand to the fire?
Right, and that's what this movie's about, is the fantasy and the dream of that. but not the actualization of it. You know what I mean? Because the actualization of it is destruction, you know, but the flirting and the fantasy of it is integral. It's such a fine line, you know, but
Because it would be boring otherwise.
yeah. Well, Dave, do you have anything you wanted to tag on to the to that conversation? Because I remember it all started with I think the Marquis de Sade, you know.
It did. It started with buying like the collected works, volume 1 and 2, and reading through it all, and then finding that she was reading through it all as well, and getting ideas. And then I was like, wait a minute, you don't get ideas. I get ideas,
Right.
you know? And it was very shocking.
That's great.
It was this fucked up moment where it's like, oh my God, you're another person. Oh my God. You know, and it's horrible to say that. It's horrible to say that. But I think sometimes we need to be much more aware that there are other people. And they have experiences unique to yours, and they have their own things driving them, and you know, sometimes it's going to come into conflict with you.
Yeah, and sexual drive is not the domain of the male. So,
Absolutely
you know what I
not.
mean?
That was another thing. It was like,
that's a scary thought sometimes.
you know, it's like, hey, hold on a minute here. Like, I'm supposed to be the weird freak, you know, and you're not supposed to be like that. And it was very awkward. It was a very it was frightening. It was very, very frightening to me, and it was the first time that I really became. And I know that sounds terrible. Like I must sound like this horrible narcissist, but I really it was this really crazy moment of like, oh wow, you know, like she could actually want something besides me, and that's weird to me, you know. Like I'm afraid of that. I don't like
narcissistic
that
at all.
No, it's horrible, dude. I'm sure it says terrible things about me as a human being, but literally it was this real serious fear, like, oh my God, you know, like I'm not the most important thing, you know.
Were you guys getting into like dark practices and that kind of stuff?
Details.
Like, I mean, I don't want to force details.
Because the Marquis de Sade has
some like that's what's curious.
Some pretty intense shit.
Like I get that psychology.
Joe loves this subject. When we were doing Salo, like
he doesn't want to play. He just wants to watch.
Of course.
Yeah, really.
But listen, I was trying to move the show along, and then Joe got mad at me. He's like, "Wait a second, Tom. Dave had a thought. Let's get back to Dave."
Dave was talking about handcuffs.
Exactly.
Now shut up.
Hands above the desk.
He would not let it go, and Joe's back on it again.
No, I mean, look, there was nothing. Trust me, there was nothing too crazy going on there, and I certainly wouldn't, besmirch a good lady's reputation.
But you know what I want to talk?
Not in a public forum such as a podcast, anyway. Talk to you later, Dave.
I mean, the idea, but the jealousy. I mean, the basis of jealousy. I mean, that is like it is narcissistic, isn't it?
Sure,
like,
it is.
just the concept of jealousy.
And it's fucked up because I'll tell you something. I had never been jealous about her up until that point. Never, like, not a fucking hint. And then it was like, oh my God. I actually feel like jealous about you doing something and without me and looking at other people like, no, that's not right, and I don't feel secure in that for a minute. Like it was a strange moment. It was a really great. I intellectually considered the fact that yes, she might be attracted to other people, and clearly was because she's a human being, but it was like this much finer understanding of that, where I was like, oh shit, you know, like I'm really
suddenly it's visceral.
Feeling,
suddenly you can feel it in your gut.
Absolutely, and it was like, oh man, I don't necessarily like this, and then it's like, oh shit, so that's probably how some other people have felt, and that's you know what I mean, and it kind of opened my eyes to some shit, you know, and
eyes wide shut.
That's right.
That's true. And seeing that movie, like when I saw that movie, I went right back to that whole experience, man, because it was just, I don't know, it was very strange, and no, we didn't do anything crazy. I missed out on a lot of that.
The occasional whipping.
No, I don't even think that. But I don't know. I don't want to fucking
riding crops, Dave?
Oh my
Don't-
God, Billy.
Just saying. I'm just saying. Nothing got too crazy. But I mean, we were young, man. We were really.
Listen to him.
Yeah, like he's
He's like dancing.
Hey,
Jeez Louise.
I treated her like the dirty horse she was.
No, it was funny. It was-
that's fine as long as he's not treated like a dirty whore.
yeah.
No, but like with me, like I don't know, man. I spent my entire high school career with this girl. You know, like that was it.
My high school.
High school career, if we call it that. No, but I mean, like I spent my high school years.
Canadian.
career.
That's funny.
It is funny.
Yeah, I get that that's funny, but it's. Am I using the term incorrectly, Tom?
No, it's fine. I don't know, Dave. I don't find anything funny anymore, to be honest with you.
Oh,
Oh, Tom.
Oh man. Hey guys, any final thoughts on Eyes Wide Shut or Full Metal Jacket for that matter?
Should we attempt to give Full Metal Jacket some room to
If
breathe?
anybody has any air, yeah, definitely.
Eyes Wide Shut really just picked it up and beat it over the head.
It was ass, dude.
It really did.
It's not even.
I'm impressed.
Like, yeah, it's like I don't even know if we could go back and add anything on to what we, even minimally discussed about Full Metal
I
Jacket.
don't know. All I think about Full Metal Jacket now is two things essentially. One, how fucked up it is that how we treat veterans is totally insane. Considering we asked them to go through this horrible.
Yeah, and then they come back fucked up, and you're like, "What's wrong with you?"
Yeah, exactly. It's like
Hey, what's your problem?
brain. We completely break your brain so that we can make it so you can actually tolerate war, right? So we put you in a position where we just utterly intolerate any aberrance whatsoever, and then throw you into a conflict, and then you come home and we go, "Oh, we're not going to help you get back to who you were before. We're not going to do that."
It's funny.
However, it is an all-volunteer army. No one is twisting their arm.
Oh,
to go
very,
do them.
very, very true. And I mean, I don't want to get into all the reasons one might join the military.
Well, not in the case of Vietnam, though.
No, it's certainly not in the case of Vietnam, right? But
Certainly not the case in Vietnam. No.
But it's fucking. It's crazy. It's fucking crazy. Like to not even oh, we're not even gonna give them good medical care. We're not even going to and just the families that have to deal with that shit. Like okay, their husband comes back and now he's an alcoholic with rage issues who fucking keeps a loaded 45 under his fucking pillow and is going all Rolling Thunder all fucking day and night. I mean, I don't know. I just can't imagine that.
Well, we make films like
that we
Article,
do that to people, and then
we make films like Article 99 in their honor.
Yeah.
So
I don't know Article 99. What's Article 99?
It's just this fluff movie about war veterans not getting proper medical care.
I mean, yeah, the larger picture of that whole operation is you go where the money is. If the jobs are in the military, which that's where a lot of money is, guys from shitty neighborhoods it's that or become a drugged out fucking crackhead and end up in jail. So they wisely choose the path that pays them a decent wage, and then they're promised that if anything gets fucked up, they're going to come back and have the Uncle Sam is going to have their back, and then they don't even have that. It's completely fucked up.
Uncle Sam and God will have their back. Both
yeah,
both fans
yeah.
of the imagination. And
Santa
Claus.
The Full Metal Jacket thing, I watched it again today. I haven't seen it in a really long time. And the thing I was struck by today was the, Kubrick said when he was about to embark on making that, he said, someone told him, well, you already made a war movie. You made Paths of Glory. Why do you want to make another? He said, well, that's an anti-war movie. I want to make a war movie. I want to know I want to not judge war. I just want to know what it is, And he was he was a war historian buff. He once said, he had a clean conscience despite the fact he was such a voracious reader of war history. He said, I have a clean conscience because I know I'm an inveterate coward. So that was his justification.
Right,
yeah. But the thing that I noticed on watching it with that comment in mind is that he can't help himself. He ends up judging the nature of war and the nature of human violence anyway. You know, he can't be an impartial observer. It's one of the least impartial movies about war ever. And the most striking thing about it for me was Joker, the main character. I think, I could be completely wrong, but the subtext I read into it is that he is curious about what it feels like to kill another human being.
There's no doubt about
And
it.
he is a voyeur. He's a war voyeur, and it's that whole what does he say? The Jungian thing, the duality of
man.
Yeah, and he can't help it. He tries to save the life of one person, but willingly murders another. You know, and
there's a fine point on that though, because you're talking about the sniper at the end of the film, obviously, right? So,
right.
But again, I think what I picked up this time watching it, or I guess the last time I watched it.
And the sniper's a young female, by
it's a young woman, but it's a mercy killing, you know? So there's like the whole thing is about dehumanization. I think actually what he ended up doing at the end there is actually a human act.
Well, and yeah, I agree. And the thing is, the last thing that she's saying is a prayer, right? It's a Buddhist prayer, right? The last thing that Gomer Pyle is saying is the prayer that he's been taught.
Right.
This is my rifle. There are many like it, but this one is mine. He's repeating the same prayer that he's been taught by his culture. So yeah, there's a real theme of or conditioning. You know, the dehumanization of conditioning.
Right, but I think that you know, when my initial read on this was how war dehumanizes. You know, somebody like turns them into a robot and dehumanizes them, and then destroys their morale, like in the first half with Pyle, and then on the second half dehumanizes them by destroying their morality. You know, as someone who's intellectually sound gets his morality is dehumanized that way. But I actually see this as today or yesterday when I watched it was actually a triumph of humanity in that when he actually killed her.
Because the cruel option would have been to leave her.
Because he maintained his humanity, and that is what allowed him to kill her.
Well, look, too, I think you have to. I don't know. What I take away from a lot of the Private Pyle stuff is that Pyle is the aberrant. Right, so everybody, all those maggots are they're grist for the mill, right? Like they all sort of take their abuse, but they take their abuse and fall into line and strive to live up to the drill sergeant's constant demands, right? They want to make him proud, and Pyle is an aberrant. Pyle doesn't care about that, you know what I mean? And Pyle's kind of just trying to survive it. And I think that's the.
But he doesn't have the requisite adaptability. He's perfectly human.
Yeah, well,
he's expected to be turned into something that he's fundamentally incapable of becoming. Right. And for that, because he can't become that, it produces a rupture in his brain that drives him insane.
I've never seen a character in almost any film that just is one thing at one moment, and this is when you first see Private Pyle, and then he gets choked, and then he becomes a completely different person immediately. Like he's a lovable, like Kubrick. Yeah. He's a lovable, soulful.
Vincent D'Onofrio is ridiculous good.
But he's he thinks he's being himself at that point. He's laughing. He thinks it's kind of funny, and then boom, he's just within seconds. He's changed into a totally different human being, almost quite the opposite person that he's been his whole life. This is an amazing performance and amazing direction by both Kubrick and D'Onofrio. Amazing.
Yeah, and it's an accident. I mean, the kid joins the military. It's purely an accident of fate that he's driven insane. That's not the intention. Maybe the other guys who pass through basic don't go insane, but he's the victim of nature,
Right.
Joe, I know you have more to say on this.
Oh, I'm starting to stray. My train of thought is starting to stray, but he can't, like you guys were talking about, he can't become the killing robot or the machine because The other guys can because they have the sort of the faculty, the mental faculty to weather the storm that's being thrown upon them. But he has less of that faculty. He can't become that. But whereas Joker, he has that faculty and more. Like he can excel over
He
it
can
and
file
maintain
it in an ironic storage
Right.
facility in his brain.
Right. And at the end of I think that what happens to Joker's humanity and what happens to the Pile's humanity and how they each happens, and it's in that juxtaposition actually is where what Kubrick is questioning or asking us to question is, how do the machinations of war affect somebody who is at the lower rung? I know this is an incredibly Nietzschean thing to say, but on the lower rung of humanity and somebody who's on the higher rung of humanity. And I always thought that that war destroyed both of these people in different ways, but it affected them in different ways at different levels, but they both lost their humanity. But I was just actually pretty struck this last time watching it, seeing that actually it's not the case, because I think though he was affected by it, I think Joker actually survived it and well in that killing. That woman was in some manner an act of mercy, or wholly an act of mercy.
And that's an accident of fate as well, because the intention was for her to just die, but yet she was like lingering.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
his intent, he was there to kill her, period.
Yes.
And then he's in this situation where she's lingering. So then then he becomes tested. His
Yeah.
humanity
So despite the fact that he's become, he's got the duality of man in him. He's got that destructive urge to kill, but at the same point, he's got the more than human urge to have mercy for others. That's just, I think,
and interestingly enough, with Joker, I mean, he's in a non-combat role, traditionally, right? And he's seeing these things through that the lens of the camera, right? I mean, he's a combat photographer.
He doesn't want to play. He's just there to watch.
Exactly. So there's a real element of that's perhaps how he's able to retain that shred of humanity that allows him to commit that human act at the end.
All right. He does have to act, though. Like he is right in the thick of it. I mean, he does experience.
Oh, for sure.
Like, I mean, his best friend dies in his arms, right?
But he's got that camera keeping him.
Well, he's got one foot on either side of the line.
Yeah. There he is.
The duality of man.
Duality of man.
I mean,
right.
and
Simply,
like
yeah.
going back, it's interesting. Like Kubrick obviously was gonna twist it in his own way, but as long as war's been around, you go back to the Iliad, and Odysseus was the guy who was the Joker. He was known for his irony and his, no one was sure what he was thinking a lot of the time, and you had what's his name, the Achilles, who was the killer, and as long as there's been war, there have been poets talking about the nature of observation versus participation, and watching it this time, I was thinking to myself, fucking Kubrick went and made this movie, which is not really a great war movie. It has some good war scenes, like the exciting stuff and everything, but it's not got the splendor of Apocalypse Now, or the horror of things like The Deer Hunter or Platoon and all this stuff. Like, by the time this came out, it was pretty well-worn territory, and it's not really much of a Vietnam movie, and you kind of go, well, why did he make this movie then? And it's in the poetry of that juxtaposition,
right.
Of the two halves. And what a ballsy friggin' move that was,
Yeah. Didn't he say something about it was probably a joke, but he said that he wanted to have an answer to the Rambo movie or something.
That sounds like something you would say, Tom.
No, because it was around the same time Rambo was out in like '85, and he was just like, he didn't want people to think of Vietnam as like
as an action movie
through Rambo. Yeah.
Well, at the same exact time, Platoon was coming out. I do remember that, actually, even though I was young. I remember seeing ads for both.
Platoon was out a year before.
Oh, was it? I thought they were both.
Platoon was 86 and Full Metal Jacket's
Okay.
87.
Well, from all accounts, Platoon, I guess, overshadowed this film, while they were both being released, I guess, over that 2-year span,
Right.
Which
which
is amazing because this film, and I think that it actually took a lot out of the box office out of Full Metal Jacket. No, anyone hear that?
Yeah, I'm sure it did. I mean, again, he was late. I think this is like something that happens to him often. I mean, he wanted to make a movie about Napoleon, and then the Waterloo movie came out, so he dismissed Napoleon. Then this whole thing with he made Full Metal Jacket, but like Billy said, you had Apocalypse Now, you had especially Platoon, which was such a big Oscar winner.
Yeah,
it's just a big movie. Then after Full Metal Jacket, his project was the Aryan Papers, which was similar to Schindler's List. And because Spielberg works a hell of a lot faster than Stanley Kubrick, he had Schindler's List out in 92 maybe. So Kubrick knew that he couldn't go on and make Aryan Papers because it was too similar to Schindler's List. So this kind of stuff it seems to happen to him, in his career a few times, and mostly because Bill he works slow. I mean,
he's so friggin' slow.
He's slow. Yeah.
When you're Stanley Kubrick, you don't have to move fast.
Or he just cares to learn as much as he possibly can about the subject that he's.
I was listening to an interview between him and someone help me with the pronunciation here. Michael Chiment. How do you say that?
Ooh.
I don't know.
Anyway, it's just so funny listening to him talk about research, and he's like so meticulous, and he's got like this super obsessive compulsive thing inside of him, but he's got the awareness of it that he tries to talk about it like it's not an obsessive compulsive relation to detail.
Right.
And it's like in his world, there's no reason you wouldn't spend 2 years researching, period costumes for Barry Lyndon, like you would have to do that, of course. I mean, you'd be insane not to,
It's just prudent.
Someone said too was like every month that Stanley Kubrick isn't making a movie is a loss for the world, and it's crazy. It kind of, I mean, it drives up the pedigree of his movies and everything. They have more value because there's so few of them, obviously, but man, it would be nice to have a couple more.
Yeah, it would. And I think he took that to his grave, that I'm sure he wanted to do more, Billy.
Well, I was reading
his wife said it bothered him like crazy that he didn't.
It did bother him.
Yeah, that's what she said.
Well, I was reading this memoir by the dude who wrote Eyes Wide Shut. I don't want to bring it back to that, but the Frederick Raphael memoir, right? He was in awe of Kieslowski, who made the Decalogue. Like he kept returning over and over to Kieslowski. Like I know I'm mutilating that name, but just in awe that the dude. He mentioned it a few times to this writer that the guy made 10 movies in a year, like it just must have been astounding to him. And those are great films,
Yeah. Well, he couldn't get out of his own way, Right. I mean, but that's what makes, every frame of one of his movies valuable is because you're wondering, like, Jesus Christ, to get to that point.
I think he had a great pace up until The Shining. I think it's that last 19 years where you only see the two movies, like where he, maybe could have fit definitely one, maybe two more in, and it just didn't happen for him. I think if the Aryan Papers worked out, we might have seen that and Eyes Wide Shut, but it was just that it didn't work out for him, unfortunately.
I would have loved to see his take on AI.
Yeah, that would have been pretty amazing.
I really would have loved to have seen that.
I mean, I know I already, it doesn't take a genius to see where Spielberg runs off in his own direction, but I kind of read a little bit of material on that, and it's even, like, there was a site or something devoted to the changes that Spielberg made to the original concept of AI, and oh my God, there's just
Does he butcher it?
Well, he just.
Oh, he makes it his own.
Spielberg's it, man.
Which is what he should do. I mean, he made it his own, which is cool.
Yeah, it's his movie, like,
right.
Yeah,
right.
But
and then it gets all Spielbergy.
Yeah, it gets.
Someone once.
I remember when I've only seen AI once, and it was on probably video or DVD when it came out. But I do remember like the last 45 minutes of the film being very Kubrickian. Like I do.
Well, there's a lot of I do recall a lot of it, a lot of the framing and the compositions feeling like the ghost of Kubrick was overseeing things
During the whole film, or what I just
I
said?
do, it's pretty dim in my memory
Now,
as well, but I do
haven't
remember.
seen it in a long, like, I mean, probably, how old is it? It's like 15 years old or something? No, not 15, but I mean, it was like over 10 years ago.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time.
Is it true? Because this is what I've heard, and I've always wondered if this is absolutely true, that Spielberg had a fax machine that Stanley told him to keep in a closet, a locked closet, and Stanley would just fax shit about AI to this fax machine.
I've heard that story too.
Oh
I didn't hear the locked closet guy is a new
Yeah,
one.
apparently he had to keep it in like a locked closet that nobody else had access to, just Spielberg.
On that note,
And they would just fax some shit.
on that note, Billy and Joe, I think you also do that, right? You have a
Yes, I'm faxing. We're faxing back and forth right now.
We've been saying shit about you guys this whole time.
via fax.
Yeah, not texting, but it's a
The
faxing.
cutting edge technology of the
Yep.
fax.
Yep.
Oh man.
Joe, you mentioned filmmakers that were influenced by and influenced Kubrick. I think you mentioned Cronenberg. Have you seen any Cronenberg movies recently?
Oh yeah, well you. What do you like?
Okay, hold on. Let me just let the audience know that we're moving on from Kubrick to David Cronenberg.
Well, that was such a weird segue, Billy. Yes, Billy, I have seen Cronenberg movies. I actually watched Cosmopolis. That fucking blew.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I texted all you guys like how much it friggin'
What
blew
was that
my-
paranoia about, Joe?
Well,
Was it because of the movie?
You kind of have to set the stage a little bit.
How would I put this? Okay, I was home alone, and I was getting a little toasted, and I put on Cosmopolis, and it made me. I had no idea what the friggin' film was about at all, and I just put it. All I knew was David Cronenberg made it. And so I put it on. I had no idea what to expect, dude. And the way that when they started talking to each other, and like there's 3 levels of meaning to what they're saying, and they're not saying everything, and it's like all like claustrophobic in that friggin' limo. It friggin' twisted me. I started having like a friggin' panic attack. Have you guys seen David? Have you
No,
seen
I
this?
haven't. But I will say this: that I wish I could watch almost every movie and not know anything like about the movie. Like, except maybe the director and maybe who's in it, I could deal with that. But almost every experience I've had where, like, I just threw on a movie that I had no idea what the fuck I was about to watch, it's always a pleasurable experience.
Yeah, well, it's just so great because, I try not to pay attention to what movies are or even watch trailers at all. Like, that's what's great thing about knowing the directors that you like after seeing some of their films. You'll just go put on there. Like, I know it's a David Cronenberg movie. I'm like, oh, great. I don't want to know fuck all about the movie. I'm just going to put it on.
Yeah,
Except I was just in a slightly altered state of mind. And I swear to God, I was having like trouble breathing.
Oh my God.
Like, it just it got into my head. Did you ever like, I don't know, you guys don't get paranoid
when you said paranoid, I thought you like maybe you were looking out your windows and you felt
not
unsafe.
like that, but you ever toke up and you get
fear,
freaking
Joe.
paranoid?
The
You ever
fear.
get that? You know what I'm talking? I think you know what I'm talking about, Tom, right?
Yes, Joe.
Okay, so that's what I was experiencing, and that movie just pushed me over the friggin' head, over the edge, man.
I would not want to be high trapped in that limousine for 2
Oh
hours.
my God, that's what it felt like. I went over the friggin' moods, but I do recommend it to anybody out there listening who has.
Dave, have you seen it?
I haven't. Yeah, I don't know why. I just haven't.
I actually got to see that in the theater, which was it was date night for my girlfriend and I.
Jesus.
Holy shit.
There wasn't a lot of talking on the subway ride home after that.
So,
You guys are like speaking in code right now.
Oh, Jesus. Well, the only thing I'm going to say is that rectal examination must have been very
Oh my God.
comfortable in the theater, Billy. Gee, I don't want to say too much because these guys haven't seen it, so you should not know anything about it before you go.
That's our new release segment for the
Is it
for the
is it
episode.
that uncomfortable?
I don't know, but I don't know if it was just because I was a little toasted or if it was because the movie, or I would suspect both. But Billy says it was. I got to go and watch it. I got to watch it with Susie this time.
You know what? Okay, Joe, here's what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
You're gonna find yourself a little movie. It's on Netflix, I think. It's called Beyond the Black Rainbow.
Okay, I've heard about this film. Yeah.
And you're gonna watch it. And there's an interesting Kubrick connection here a bit because the film has a little bit of a 2001 kind of Kubrick-y vibe. But also we were talking about Rambo, and it's directed
you
by the son of the director of Rambo.
Oh, Cosmatos?
Yeah. And
really?
So this is Panos. This is his son, Panos. And
Panos. What's this movie, Dave?
It's called Beyond the Black Rainbow.
Okay. I've heard
this kid
good
is a
things about
fucking
his son.
genius, man.
Yeah, I've heard good things
so
about that guy.
good. He is so good, man. And
I
Beyond the
always
Black
thought
Rainbow.
I always thought George Cosmatos had potential because I kind of like. I'm not a big fan of westerns, but you guys are gonna laugh. You're gonna probably
Tombstone, right?
I love Tombstone.
Tombstone.
But I see a lot of good in Tombstone.
Yeah, it's a good film.
I see some good filmmaking there.
I liked Cobra. That's my favorite George Cosmatos.
Very stylistic film.
Cobra, man. That was fucking badass.
I haven't seen that in years. Jesus Christ.
I watch Cobra annually, man. I have it on VHS right here, babe.
I will check that film out. I just wrote it
man.
down. So.
Seriously, a couple of bong rips. Throw that thing on. It will do bad things.
It has been years since I watched a film in that state, and Jesus, man, it just threw me for a loop, man.
I put it on at a theater, man, and it was amazing. I did a theatrical screening of it. And
all right, gentlemen,
fucking awesome.
Before we put Stanley Kubrick to shame with more George Cosmatos talk, I'm gonna wrap it up here. I mean, it's been Billy. I mean, it's been quite a journey, hasn't it, my friend? You've been with me since the beginning. Dave's been with me since the beginning here.
Yes. I don't think we're any closer to mastering the art of Kubrick than we were before, which is great. As we said at the beginning, just turn us off and go watch Stanley Kubrick movies.
I think
that's
the best. That's the best possible. You shouldn't even be listening to this shit. Just go watch Stanley.
What are you doing?
We had an opportunity to do this at the beginning, Billy and Dave. If you remember, after Dave's review, we were just like, you know what? What else are we gonna do? What are we gonna say? I mean, let's just be real here. Let's just watch Stanley Kubrick movies.
You have made a colossal mistake.